We would like to welcome everyone out to our City Council meeting this evening and would like to call this meeting to order. We would like to begin with a prayer by Mary Cryer and a Pledge of Allegiance by Owen Shumway.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we ask thy blessings to please be with us during this meeting of the Orem City Council. We pray for inspiration and guidance for all those who are here, that the best needs of the people here will be met. We thank thee for all those who work for our city and perform all these many duties and responsibilities. And we pray for open minds and hearts as we conduct this meeting this night. Thank thee, Father, in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Owen. I would like to recognize that we have Utah County Commissioner Bill Lee in the audience. Appreciate having you here. I also wanted to make mention that Mark Seastrand is out of town for a UVU event and will not be with us this evening. I would like to go on to the approval of minutes. We would like to approve the minutes of the joint Orem Provo City Council meeting January 22nd, 2015, the minutes of joint Orem Provo City Council meeting July 16th, 2015, the minutes of the joint Orem Provo City Council meeting February the 11th, 2016, and the minutes of the City Council meeting March 29th, 2016. Do we have a motion? You want to push the button?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I would like to go over the upcoming events that we have on our calendar. On April the 30th, we have a picnic at noon at Sunset Heights East Neighborhood Community Park. On May the 3rd, the City Council will be meeting in the main lobby of the Sierra and touring the Sierra from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. On May the 4th, the City Council will be meeting at the Hale Center Theater at various locations and tour from 6 to 7 p.m. On May the 11th, we have the Miss Orem Scholarship Program, mock interviews at 7 p.m. here at the City Council Chambers. On May the 21st, we have the Miss Orem Scholarship Program at the Sierra. That pageant will take place at 7 p.m. On May the 30th, we have the City of Orem Memorial Day program at the cemetery at 9 a.m. On June the 7th through the 11th, we have Summerfest in the City of Orem. On June the 10th, we have the City of Orem All Together Playground Shootout with Jimmer Fredette at Orem High School at 6 p.m. On July the 19th, we have a town hall meeting at 6 p.m. at Cherry Hill Elementary. And also on October the 18th, we have a town hall meeting at Bonneville Elementary with 3 members of the City Council and encourage those that can to attend. We have 4 appointments to boards and commissions. First of all, we have an appointment to the Arts Council, Bart Francis. Bart has been a longtime member of the Orem community. He has taught art at Mountain View High School, visual art. Since 2006, he has a BA and MA in art education from Brigham Young University. And he states when he's not teaching or making art, he enjoys reading, gardening, and spending time with his wife and 4 daughters. He would like to serve on the Arts Council. We have 3 reappointments to the Public Works Advisory Commission. First of all, Casey Shaw, Carol Walker, and Ty Reiser. Do we have a motion to make these appointments to these boards and commissions?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Set.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have personal appearance time, of which nobody has signed up, and so we will go ahead and move forward to our consent items. Jamie, any consent items that you have? Okay, we'll then move forward to our scheduled items. Our first one is a public hearing on PD 21 University Downs Concept Plan. This is an ordinance amending Appendix O of the Orem City Code pertaining to the concept plan applicable to Area 3 of the PD 21 zone at 1200 South Geneva Road. Jason Bench is our presenter, and we'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Let me let this warm up here for just 1 second. So like you mentioned, Mayor, before you tonight is an amendment to the concept plan and the elevations that are proposed for Area 3. If you recall, back in August of 2015, they came before you and made some modifications to the text and also the concept plan. As they went into additional design of the project, they'd indicated or discovered that they needed to add some additional or make some modifications to that concept plan to make it more functional for them and pencil for their project. Just to point out areas, there's Area 1, 2, and 3. Area 1 is the Wolverine Crossing, which is existing. Area 2 is the University Lofts, or Parkway Lofts, that's under construction currently. Area 3, which is adjacent to University Parkway, is the area that we're talking about tonight. So we're only talking about Area 3 pertaining to the concept plan. Currently, they have on the concept plan 214 units, 627 bedrooms, and 1,024 total beds. As you can see on the before you is they're proposing 437 total units, 927 total bedrooms, and 1,548 total occupancy units. The PD21 zone was set up to have a minimum standard, not a maximum density, so they're well within that because there is no maximum. As long as they can meet the parking and other requirements of the ordinance, they are well within their boundaries. What they're proposing is to modify the concept plan before you tonight. This is what was approved back in August. You can see on the concept plan that they had originally some wrapped married student housing at this location. They had the student towers, is what they were calling them, on this location. They had the amenities building at this location and then a future hotel here. They're keeping all the same features. They're just modifying portions of that. You can see the parking structure has reduced in the overall footprint. But they're keeping the same height, and they're having just a minimal, so it's a full height of the structure, but they're having 1 unit per floor for that entire, so they're basically reducing that, shifting all those married students in a combination of student wing and the married wing that you can see at this location. The 120 feet is the maximum height within the zone. The concept plan or the ordinance was changed back in August to reflect either 120 or what's listed on the concept plan. And so you can see this concept plan before you lists each building and the heights that would be approved at that location. So the hotel would still be the 120, the parking structure at 100, the marrieds at 70, and then the student tower, which would be next to University Parkway, would be the 110. And then the overall amenity building would be the 70 feet. So you can see compared to the existing and the proposed, they still have the outdoor recreational stuff. They still have the amenity stuff within the amenities building itself, and the parking is accommodated for as well. This gives you the overall concept of what they're proposing. You can see the lofts building in the background. So this is what you'll see from University Parkway. The Planning Commission, I can go through each of the individual buildings if you'd like, but the Planning Commission reviewed this, and basically all they're not changing any text, it's simply the concept plan and the elevations that are before you tonight. So I'll be glad to address any questions.
First of all, is the applicant here? Could he come forward? Jason, a question I have is, so if you can come forward and just sit right there with Joe. It appears that your population has gone up by about 50% with this program. So how does that affect the parking?
So the parking is 0.065 0.65 per occupancy unit. An occupancy unit is a bedroom that's 110 square feet or less. And then if it's over 110 square feet, we're going to count it as 2 occupancy units. And so that's why the number of beds versus the number of units is different. And so that's how we calculate that. And so this project meets that parking requirement.
So they've been for this?
Yes, and so if you can see, the overall concept plan shows, so the original, and the architect's here to explain that, but the parking deck will finish at this level right here. This, there's some meeting space and other things that will be on top once the hotel comes in. So the original build will just be, they'll build the foundation, footings and all that to support the additional elevations, but they will not add this element until the hotel is built. So this would be the top of the parking structure. It's 8 stories.
And is the parking garage the only place that people will be parking?
There is some surface, but it is very limited. So you can see on this, there is a little bit of surface parking here.
Okay.
There is some surface over here, and if I understand correctly, there's some under this at the ground level. There is some parking.
So they are meeting city requirements.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
This is Keith from AE Urbia. He can address any questions.
Great. Glad to have you here, Keith. Councilmember McDonald.
Could you go back to the slide that kind of shows it drawn out? Those other buildings in the background in gray are just the existing land around it, not the subject property. Is that correct?
It's not the subject. The university lofts, or I keep calling it university lofts. It's the Parkway lofts, excuse me. They're under construction currently, so this is kind of an outline of what they look like.
And which buildings, do you have an idea of which order you'll be building the buildings, or are you going from the ground up all the way?
Ask that again.
Are you building this in stages or everything but the hotel right away?
Push
Yes.
the red button down. Or push, there you go. By pushing it, it'll...
You got it.
Oh, hello. All right. Yes, the hotel is coming at a later time.
Right.
The way it's going to be phased, first is the amenity building and the parking structure. So the 2 buildings on your far left there, and then shortly after, we're talking like phasing within a month and a half, is the student building, which is the one on the far east.
Okay.
So yeah, the 3 major buildings are going up right now. The hotel is being planned for in the future. We just don't have a hotel chain and all that.
You don't have a flag to fly yet?
Not yet, yeah, correct.
Any other questions? Councilmember Sumner.
You have a married wing and a single wing. Is that correct? Or
Yes, that's correct. You can.
Can you-
there.
can you legally do that? I don't know.
No.
Designate this as married and this as single.
It's strictly just for, I guess, for us to understand the market that we're going after. More than likely, because of the market research that the owner has done on this, there probably will be spillover into the married wing just from single students and vice versa. We're calling it the married wing because so for instance, the married wing will consist of 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom and studio apartments. In other words, apartments geared more towards a student who is married, or it could be single students. It just depends on whatever you want. Whereas in the student wing, if you see on the far east and the student tower, those units are 3 bedroom and 4 bedroom units. And those bedrooms are more geared towards shared bedrooms, whereas the married student wing units are more geared towards a single bed. So,
And how many bedrooms are the married? 2 bedrooms? Is that what you said? Or?
yeah, I believe there's one or 2 3-bedroom units in that building, but it's a majority is studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms.
But you could pile in several students in those if you want, I guess.
Yeah, you could. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Councilmember Lentz?
So a question on parking. So the student wing that's on the right side there, I see there's some ground parking. I would bet that those will probably be in fairly high demand at some point. I'm just wondering, is there a road along there or close by that would have street parking as well, or is all of the rest of the parking pretty much concentrated in the structure?
Yeah, so on the far east is the front runner train. And so the only parking that surface stalls that we have is right there on the east side. And, you know, there's a handful of stalls in front of the amenity building, but the majority of the parking will be at the parking structure. In order to provide some connectivity between the buildings, so the parking structure and the married student building will have a connection. I want to say at every level. It's probably like 5 out of the 6 levels will have a like a breezeway connection between those buildings, so that students don't have to go down 8 stories, go over and go up 6 stories, and have that. So,
Thank you.
When is your projected start date?
as soon as we get site plan approval.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Larry.
I just have a question about the heights as related to your neighbors, like the hotel and your 110. Are they going to fit in the neighborhood? I mean, what's already existing there? Or will they be higher than what's currently there?
They will be much higher than what's currently there.
Much higher.
The hotel, is that the Holiday Inn Express? I think that's right across there. That's 4 levels. And so our amenity building, which is the smallest building that we have, is 6 levels. And it's probably going to be about 20 feet taller than that hotel. So it will be prominent right there on the corner.
Okay.
Just by the way, this is the existing concept plan, so you can see the heights. It was originally approved at 91 feet for the parking structure with 102 feet on that wrap. And so the proposed will go to 100 feet at the build out. So the original or the existing structure that will be built will be around 80 to 90 feet.
So Jason, in that picture previous, it says amenity building and condo tower. So are you selling condos as well?
Yeah, the owner does want that option to have those be condos. If there's a high enough demand,
Okay.
those will be condos. If there's not, then they'll be student housing.
And I know you've told us this before, but what amenities are you going to be offering?
So in that amenity building, there is pretty much everything you can think of. There's a full-size NCAA basketball court on the far east. And then kind of right next to the amenity building there on the east, there's 2 pools. In the middle, there will be a soccer field. You see the nice green grass area there. In the amenity building itself, there's the basketball court, there's a 2-lane bowling alley, there's billiards, there's a kind of a stepped theater area for room for about 50 to 100 people. Kind of a lounge theater, not really like a movie theater, but more of like a lounge theater. There's a exercise room on the 3rd level and a tiny daycare facility as well. So that's kind of and then the rest will be condos in the amenity building.
Okay.
As well, there's also kind of in the courtyard of the student building, there's kind of we're calling it the donut area, where the married students are. There's a splash pad and kind of a playground for the kids, and then a volleyball court and a small climbing tower in the courtyard of the student tower.
They won't be without something to do then.
No.
Councilmember Lentz.
So this question is for Jason. A little while ago, there was a city issue where there was concern over building heights, and one of the concerns brought up was that the noticing radius was not wide enough, and people were concerned that this is going to block my view, but I was not notified. I'm just wondering, with that being across the freeway from the majority of single-family housing in that area, I'm wondering how much of that single-family residential area did we catch? I was trying to look through the names of the individuals that were noticed for the neighborhood meeting, but with that being a higher structure, I'm wondering, did we get sufficient notification for the surrounding properties? And
We did 1,000 feet, which is what the council recommended. And so and they had eight people show up. And this has been an ongoing. The ordinance has been in place for many years. This is simply just a concept plan. The actual heights have been approved because there is maximum 120 feet, and that's been in the books for quite some time. So this is just a modification to that concept.
Thank you.
Seems like to the south, you have mostly apartments across the street.
There is apartments.
And then to the north, you have the UTA station.
If we're going to have height, this is one of the good areas to have that additional height.
Yeah. Councilmember Sumner.
Was a new traffic study required on this, Jason? Or
As part of the site plan, they were required to do an amendment. Paul Goodrich is working with them to get that because of the.
so that's not been performed yet?
As far as my understanding, they're
It has actually. It was finished this week.
so they'll be part of our review to get to the Planning Commission next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the council? This is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Anyone who would like to speak to this issue, please state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing that no one is coming forward, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council and close the public hearing portion of this. Any other comments from the council? Okay, well, I would like to make a motion that the City Council amend Appendix O of the Orem City Code pertaining to the concept plan of Area 3 of the PD 21 zone at 1200 South Geneva Road. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Spencer.
Aye.
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 Okay, the ordinance passed. Move on to number 16. Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate that. We'd like to now discuss a resolution to adopt the 2016 Water Master Plan and accept the water user rate study. Chris Shirkey is our presenter, and we'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Neil will be handing out the hard copy of the master plan for you to take home. If you would not like to keep that, we have sent you an electronic copy. We'd be more than happy to keep a paper copy for staff. It's up to you. But what you have before you then is a copy of this master plan that was completed just recently. And we've been working with Bowen Collins and Associates for the past 2 years, since about June of 2014. This is the last of the 3 master plans that we've been working on. We have approved and adopted the sewer master plan as well as the storm water master plan, and now we're here before you to present the water master plan. With that, we'll go ahead and start. Neil will be making the presentation. You have seen a good portion of this presentation. We have modified it and trimmed it down a little bit, so we do have that other slideshow and other information that has been put on record in our previous meeting. And in addition to that, we'll be putting this on record as well for the public to see and to review. We'll also have this on our website on oremutilities.orem.org. So that's utilities.orem.org. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Neil for the presentation.
Well, I've been watching YouTube videos on how to make an awesome presentation. And I'm neither here to motivate you nor sell you anything, and so all I am here to do is try and educate you. We do have our consultant representative, Keith Larson, here as well, and our financial consultant, Fred Philpott, to field any questions that you might have that we can't answer. But yeah, so I don't. It's not flashy. I don't have any multicolored socks on or multi-patterned. I'm just here to present the Water Master Plan as it is, and you've seen a lot of this. So I hope to invite conversation during or at the end as well. But we have 2 objectives tonight. We want to improve the 168-page Water Master Plan, and with that, recommend a financial plan that goes with it to get from where we are to where we need to be. Our system is not unlike a similar system with water up above. Gravity is our friend in the water business. We use gravity to bring the water down
It provides our pressure. We don't have to pump it. It keeps our water costs low. We have sources, we have conveyance, we have storage, and we have distribution. That makes up a lot of the components within it. I've broken it down into 4 simple components when the reality is it's a very complex system to run, to bring water that originates up in the Uinta Mountains from snow on down through the river systems, a couple of reservoirs, canals, or rivers, some wells, some springs, ultimately makes it clean and awesome right to your tap. It's not seen like some of the other things that are out there. We flip the switch on and it comes on. We can't touch and feel the pipes that are under the ground. Even the walls, even the pipes in your home are covered, and you have the fixture there, and it's there. 1953 was not unlike a night like tonight, where the Orem City dads and now mothers had a decision to make of a $1 increase, which today would be $8.85. In that same year, Orida introduced their tater tot that were just simply leftovers from their French fry line. Additionally, in that year, Corvette introduced and released and built, ironically, in Flint, Michigan, this beautiful vehicle. We'll get to Flint maybe in a different discussion. 1955, there was a lot of growth going on. If you look at the little sentence there, you can't read it, but it reads Orem, the city of tomorrow, the city of phenomenal growth that has only just begun to grow as Utah County extends its industrial expansion. Part of that same newspaper article, they were talking about the growth and the commercial expansion, recreation, a long history of arts, and a long history of culinary water supply in Orem. In 1960, the manager tells Orem to increase the water. In that same newspaper, T-bone steaks were 69 cents a pound. It made news that a Mapleton woman broke her arm, and right underneath that, Mr. and Mrs. Dwayne Roberry and their 3 children moved into their new home over the weekend, and it was newsworthy. So we move forward to 1962, and again, Orem is experiencing a need to increase its rates. This time for treatment plant expansion. Prior to that, water would come, we would chlorinate it and put it into the system. FHA said, you need a treatment plan or we're not giving out any more loans. In both water and sewer, an equivalent $7.10 were introduced. 1962, again, there's a lot of articles about the paper, in the paper about Orem's water needs. Fast forward to 1976, and we signed an agreement with Central Utah Water Conservancy District to give us 7,500 acre feet. We were going to start deliveries for that in 1979. We actually began deliveries of that in 1996. We were supposed to be finished receiving our allotment of 7,500 in 1996. This is the first year that we'll receive that full 7,500 allotment. Every day we have a very talented staff led by Lane Gray, our water section manager, that are qualified, competent, and in not a bad way, proud employees of the water system that they manage. I hope if you see them, you give them a thanks, because they work after hours, they work on cold nights, they work on hot days, on call, and even those who aren't on call that respond to those on-call emergencies should be thanked. I can't say enough about our section and the work that they do. So here we are tonight. We've approved the stormwater plan. We've approved the sewer plan, and we've recommended a move forward financial plan. Stormwater and sewer are a little bit different. In stormwater, we had a pipe network and detention basins that we want to install, and we want to help protect our water supply. And it's not quite built out yet. It's a newer utility, having started in 1996. In sewer, we recently had a treatment plan upgrade of $14 million, so we didn't need to discuss that. The focus there was mostly on the collection system repair and replacement program in a preventative approach. The water, we have 5 main areas of focus in the first 5 years, and I want to emphasize that these are our needs that are for today. The 10 million gallon tank is a need that we have today. The 2 and 4 inch undersized line replacements are projects that went in yesterday and now are time to replace. Water reuse is implementing a plan that went in yesterday, years ago, when the golf course and Lakeside Sports Park were first even planned and designed. They were always planned from an infrastructure standpoint and a water supply standpoint to be supplied with water reuse from the Orem Water Reclamation Facility. 2 new wells.
Neil, can I make a point?
Go ahead.
Too? Speaking to the point that the planning took place many years ago, we needed to obtain a right to be able to reuse water, and that was obtained through the city engineer, through the state engineer's office. And that was an extensive effort that we have to go through to obtain that. We have 9,600 acre feet of water that we can reuse annually each year. And even after that point, in about 2000, we have been installing pipe, but never put a drop of water into that because we have not taken this step. And so this is, like Neil has said, this has been in the works for over 15 years. And we've been planning for it for a long time.
I was going to say, right now we're using treated water from up on the hill to water the golf course and down there for the Lakeside Park. And that's just a really good waste of treated water. We should be using reused water.
This is an environmentally wise use of water, and it will help extend our water supply into the future as well.
Yeah, thank you. We are proposing 2 new wells to access the rights that we have in order to supply our demands.
Neil, where would those wells be placed?
We have not yet sited them, but along with the 10 million gallon tank, which we are in the middle of the siting study, we would anticipate one of those going near that. A typical design component is to put those 2 together. Mm-hmm. Probably mid-city somewhere is where we're looking, above the bench, but somewhere in the middle. We're going to get to the map in a minute where we have a lot of our storage and a lot of our supply in certain locations, and we'd like to diversify that a little bit. We have a lot of meters, about 22,000 in our city, and some of them have reached their useful life and well beyond. We want to replace the new meters, and with the replacement, put in newer technology with them. With the meters that are existing, we'd like to put a transmitter on them that can transmit the data and give us up-to-date information as operators and give the consumer information about their water use.
Neil, I was just going to say on the meters, it's my understanding that if we had new meters, we would save probably about $220,000 in labor costs of water meter readers. It's also my understanding that in theory, we could save up to $600,000 a year or receive $600,000 a year in additional revenue that we may not be receiving right now and reading the water usage correctly. The other item that's interesting is that I believe that this would allow for people to then read on the computer what their own house usage is using. And from what I've read in other cities, when people actually have the opportunity to read and see what their house is using, there's about a 30% saving, less water being used because people start to regulate or notice that maybe they're watering their lawn too often or they have a leaky faucet, things like that. From my reading of other cities, there is a self-regulating savings that will occur within our city.
That is correct, Mayor. And as you're aware, all of the council members and some staff and other select meters have been replaced, or the meters that you have been replaced with this technology in an attempt to inform you and to educate you and ourselves, quite frankly, as staff. And out of about 22 meters that were installed, there were at least 3 of those where we detected leaks inside the home. We helped myself. We helped Margaret Black on hers. And there was another one, I'm not certain, I think it was somebody on our Public Works Advisory Commission. What that means to those individuals, in addition to water conservation, is that they'll have a savings on their sewer base rate. And you might ask, well, what does this have to, or excuse me, on the sewer consumption? And so what they were using throughout the year, the sewer production, I should say. And so in my case, for example, I noticed that there was a leak that I had going on in my home this last winter. I detected that using this technology, and then I replaced a leaky flapper valve in a toilet downstairs. I couldn't hear the leak, quite frankly, but I did notice a little ripple in the water, and so I decided to check that data. And what it did is I would have been charged for 13 units or 13,000 gallons for sewer throughout the entire year, and now I'll only be charged for 8, and that is the actual consumptive use that I had. There are other water conservation aspects to this as well. Neil's going to speak a little bit later on in this presentation regarding the governor's charge to reduce our per capita consumption by 25%. Up to the year 2025. He gave us that directive back in 2015, so last year. So we do feel strongly that AMI will help us in many ways. Water conservation, we believe that it'll produce additional revenue. It'll help us to follow the governor's mandate as well, and to put the power of that technology into the hands of the consumers. I know that Mr. Lentz, for example, has been excited to have one in his, as well as Debbie. He's actually gone out and purchased additional tools to tie into that. I'm not familiar exactly with what he's done, but I appreciate his enthusiasm for that as well, and excited to see how that benefits him this summer as he receives alerts.
So we're going to see a conservation occurrence from this in our water, but also there's a return on investment. So while there's a cost to this, over a period of time, that cost will be returned through the additional water revenue and through the labor savings, where this actually will pay for itself over many years. So
that's correct. It'll pay for itself, but over more of an extended period of time. Meters are generally anticipated, or the manufacturer recommends that they last around 15 to 20 years before they replace them. Of course, that's the manufacturer's recommendation. We have meters in the ground that we've had for more than 20 years, but we do know that they are not reading properly as well. Some read high, some read low. In either case, it's unfair for the community at large.
All right. So what do you expect from your water utility? Clean, reliable, abundant, and we are expected in the water industry to be responsible. The purpose of the master plan: resolve existing and future deficiencies, do a rate study, and it'll be a working document as we gather new information and we update yearly usage and trends. The scope of the project was really simple. You'll remember the last slide I had many lines and many different pieces and parts, but I boiled it down to look at what we have right now, look at where we are in 2025, look at what we need for 2060, and what are the financial components to get there. That's really what the scope of the master plan is. Part of the scope was to provide some public involvement, and the city staff and we formed the Public Works Advisory Commission. We had public open houses. There were newspaper articles, mailers, the website, work sessions and meetings, and the infamous chat with a bureaucrat. We're going to dive into the nuts and bolts of the master plan itself. After we go through a little bit of the master plan, we'll start talking about the rates. trying to do justice with all the information that's there and the water system in the next few minutes. I'll go through these that you've seen. The blue represents our baseline usage. We call that our indoor usage because that's the usage that happens during the winter. We set that at the level of November through April, and then the green represents when people start turning on their sprinklers, and we have the outdoor usage. It peaks out about 60 million gallons a day. Just for reference, it's been brought up that we do provide wholesale water to Vineyard. Vineyard utilizes about 4 million gallons per month. We have businesses that use 1.5 million gallons or 2.5 million gallons per month. We have Lakeside
In Orem.
in Orem, Lakeside Park and the golf course utilize about 1.5 million gallons a day.
Neil, Councilmember McDonald's got a question.
Help me with the math. I think I'm on. Am I on? Help me with the math. Is that 10 in this chart? Is that 10 million gallons a day?
Correct.
And Vineyard's using how many?
About 4 million gallons per month.
Thank you very much.
Very, very minor. So this chart represents all of our supply in the lines represented as solid colors, and the red line represents our projected usage with some conservation, and the blue line represents our projected usage without any conservation. We do have a trend that we're seeing some conservation efforts, and so we're anticipated to fall under the pink line, the pink block, and not need to obtain additional supply. That's really a tribute and a compliment to planners, water planners of Orem in years past. It really is. This map will set the stage for the next few diagrams. You can see, as represented by the light blue tank-looking items in the top northeast corner of the city, those are the water tanks that we have. The dark lines throughout the city streets represent some of the backbone or the skeleton, large pipe network in the city. There is a pipe underneath pretty much every city street. You can pretty much count on a water line being underneath there. The different shaded colors represent pressure zones, which pretty much represent different contour lines and service areas, if you will. This map represents nodes or hydrants, and we measure pressure. We model the pressure that we anticipate will happen under different scenarios. Pay attention to the dot color. Anything black is of concern. Anything red represents some concern, and anything above red represents a good, healthy system. And again, I'd like to represent that this is under existing conditions now, which we call static, which means no flow going through it. Peak conditions represent a dynamic condition where everybody turns their sprinklers on and there's a lot of water going through it. So existing conditions under the peak hour, we start to see some red. If you're in your home and you experience 30 to 50 psi, you start wondering where your pressure is. But as a water system, we represent that that's safe and okay, not comfortable, but safe. We move on here to show some of the water projects that are proposed in the next 10 years of that pipeline system. We do show the Southwest Annex improvements, but we're not directing any money to there. The council gave direction that the developer will put all of the improvements in there, and we are not funding anything in the Southwest area. They are just shown for reference. And the council adopted impact fees that will also be in place for the Southwest area. And in the future, there will be impact fees citywide for the city as well. So take note of the project C6 and C1 in 2034 and 2025. If we don't do a water reuse project that project will need to be moved up. But we are hoping that you see the need and approve the funds necessary for that, and we're assuming that that will happen. This map shows some of the smaller components of the water system that need to be upgraded. We call these our 4-inch water lines for fire flow. They're prioritized based on when we would want to do them in a phase. If we don't do any projects, our tanks, our wells, and our conveyance system, by build out, this is what our map looks like. A lot of black, a lot of red, a lot of concern. If we build our projects, this is what our map looks like. Green and blues, some reds scattered throughout. So what are the consequences of not building a 10 million gallon tank? We would in fact be in a drinking water system violation. That's not a good place to be in. Orem's never had, to any of the recollection of the existing employees that date back 30 plus years, a system violation that would include any such violation, most notably a boil alert or anything like that. That would eventually spark a development moratorium by the state on both commercial and residential. And it overtaxes our wells and our ground sources. We run out of water during peak demand times, jeopardizing fire protection. The only recourse we would have as a city to try and manage this is to put in water restrictions. And, every other day water restrictions have a small effect. We're talking about probably bigger water restrictions than that. 2- and 4-inch replacements on a day-to-day basis, we're okay. We operate. People can do what they need to do. The challenge we have is in a fire scenario. We're not okay, given that we don't have any fire supply issues near and around elementary schools or schools, but we do have some throughout neighborhoods. And if they are 4-inch, they're definitely old enough that we're going to start to have increase in leaks and water outages and potential water quality issues. I've put an example up there of Wasatch Junior High in Salt Lake City where they had a small fire in an elementary school, and it would have been put out. It's my opinion, and it's the opinion of others, that if they would have had adequate fire suppression and water supply, it could have not been what it was. I mentioned before about water reuse. If we don't implement the water reuse program, we will have to speed up the projects down 4th East and 4th South. We are experiencing today low pressures in the central zone, and we are experiencing customer complaints. That's an existing need of today, not due to any growth in the future or vineyard. As I mentioned before, that demand is really a small portion. And it should be noted that the Metropolitan Water District of Orem's boundaries always included the vineyard area from the inception of 1935. We already mentioned the valuable resource that water is. Not implementing the wells, constructing new wells has a similar supply issue as with the tanks. The wells will augment the supply, and we risk running out of water, which has the same implications as a tank. We've talked a little bit about meter replacement. AMI stands for Advanced Metering Infrastructure. The governor has challenged, and the legislature took the first step in mandating water conservation-oriented rates and through block rates or a tiered structure, which we're going to get to. But we have meters in the city that only read 30% of the flow. We have meters in the city that if someone takes a shower, it doesn't record their water usage. We have meters that if someone does use the water, it records 120 or 130% of their usage. And that's we did an AWWA study, and we did come out in aggregate about 96.5% of our readings. But there was a meter on the low end of 30%, several meters in the 80%, several in the 120. We need to bring that and rein that back so that that customers are paying what they ought to. We already talked about the optimization and the education that comes from that. And the one item that's not really got a dollar figure on it is the continued risk of putting meter readers out on the streets. They've had an accident on occasion. They run into dogs. They run into bees, fences, and anytime you put people out on the streets in traffic, there is a risk associated with that. So the council gave us direction after we presented some initial plans to bring a 5, 7, 10-year and a bonding scenario. And this chart is going to set the stage for the upcoming charts. The bottom blue dash line represents our current funding level with a little bit of growth. The black line at the very top represents where we want to get to. And in all of the plans in 2026, they all land at the same spot. And the different colored bar graphs represent the different components of the water system. In all of the plans, the water reuse in light blue is towards the front because we need to do that for distribution purposes. In all of the plans, the water tank, 10 million gallon tank, is to be constructed around 2021. So we're not talking about building the tank tomorrow. We're talking about planning for the future in 5 years. This is a 10-year plan for now. This plan will continue on for another 30 years at the desired funding level. These are just projects and plans that we see now, and I've presented and highlight the first 5 years. The 7-year implementation plan stretches out some of the projects. You can see that we need 3 years of saving for the tank there to be built in 2021. The AMI, which is the green bars, get stretched to start in 2020 and the final phase in 2023. The 10-year plan stretches things out a little bit further. The most notable, I'm going to go back to the 7 and the 10, is we get a few of the fire flow issues taken care of that are in priority 1. And then in the 10-year plan, we still have to push those out a little bit. We have to save. Only doing a few projects or none in 2019 and 2020 and only saving money is very difficult. That presents a very large challenge when the roadway plan is to perform overlays and reconstruction. And I would like to put in water lines ahead of that. I would like to replace those 4-inch lines or those aging lines that have a history of leaks prior to that. And we basically have 2.5 years here where we don't replace any of those lines. The bonding scenario is shown here. It puts all of the fire flow in 2018. It still builds the tank in 2021. But the downside to that is the bottom yellow base there, where we do have bond payments and bond obligations to take care of. So how do we fund this water utility? How do we fund these projects? Well, we have a base rate, and the 3/4-inch meter is $14.19, and we have a water volume charge that's currently 58 cents per thousand. I told you before that the legislature said no more uniform rates, so we have to implement a block or a tiered structure that encourages conservation. So I'm going to show you the next charts that are a little bit busy, but it has the base rate, the winter rate, the summer rate, the average monthly bill per single-family home, and the monthly increase. But the most important aspect of this chart is the total CIP. So we can adjust all of the columns to the left in order to reach the total capital improvement project budget. So when I ask you to approve a plan, a move forward plan, whether it's a 5, 7, 10, or bonding, what you essentially are doing is approving the total CIP allocated for that year. We can tweak some of the items to the left to match that total CIP. This is what we've come up with to try and reach that level, to try and make it gradually get there, to spread it out. Basically, the summer usage rate equates to about 1.5 times what the winter usage rate is. The 7-year rate leaves us with a $5.6 million CIP deficit. The 10-year implementation leaves us with about $10.7 million in CIP deficit, and through the bonding scenario, we made that neutral by effectually setting the bonding amounts as needed to cover the projects. Remember, in 1953, we were in a similar situation. This is a summary of all the 5, 7, 10, and the bonding. And I put on the open house just so we can show that we held open houses and presented this to the public. And, that was a starting point, and we've evolved. Now we have different scenarios on the table. They all equal $283 per month on average over the next 10 years. Here's how we compare to other communities. Right now we're sitting at about $27, $26.95. For our 2017 rates, the dark lines represent where we are today. The lighter lines represent the different scenarios, and of course in the purple represents the other cities. We're going to fast forward 5 years in 2021. If the surroundings and comparative cities increase a little bit of inflation of 3%, where we would land. Even in the 5-year pay-as-you-go plan, we still land in the middle. Then fast forward 10 years from now, we still land in the middle. It's my claim that other cities are going to increase their water rates to pay for infrastructure projects, tanks, and the likes. So what do we do now? Hopefully we adopt the Water Master Plan. We accept the user rate study. We recommend a move forward plan. And each year we move forward with that plan. We're going to bring what you recommend to you next week through the rate adoption, and then you'll see it again in the upcoming budget meetings. That's all I have for today, and we'll open the floor for questions.
That's a very good presentation. I appreciate what you're showing there. It's obvious that if we don't stay up with our infrastructure, if we don't reinvest for the future, that we will have problems in the future. I've actually seen one city up to the north that had not reinvested in their water lines, and their water lines started to deteriorate to the point that they had some major expense. Orem's been very good, I think, about providing water supplies that are plentiful and having good infrastructure and having good tasting water. So I think those that have gone before us for many years ought to be congratulated, and I appreciate what they've done. And this is an important step. There's a lot of things to look at, and it's costly. So there's a lot to consider. Councilmember LeRae.
Today, when I was talking to some neighbors, I had a little pushback on the summer versus winter rates. A gentleman said to me, I don't want to be penalized for conserving. I want to pay what I use, and if I conserve less, I want to have my rates reflect that. So have we looked at the tiered rate where the more you use, the more you consume, you'd actually pay a higher rate per gallon versus the summer versus winter? Have you analyzed just the more you use, the higher you pay? Sort of scenario.
We did look at all forms of different funding and billing methods. We tried to, because there's a lot going on with all of our rates right now, we tried to keep it to a simple transition for now. We can always change that in the future, but in our discussions with staff and with our consultant and our feedback from the public, we felt like a winter and a summer rate were our best option to keep it simple. There are communities that do implement even as much as a 5-tier rate structure. And we felt like explaining that to our constituency was extremely difficult. The other part of that was if the consumers don't have access to the information of where they are within that tiered tier, how can we didn't feel like it was appropriate to have that many tiers. When we have full build out with AMI and they're able to access that information, they're going to know where they land within that tier, and they may choose to not water in that last few days of the month if they're about to hit that tier. So we felt like this was kind of right in the middle of meeting the requirement to have a block or a tiered rate. And so does that answer your question?
Councilor McDonald.
Neil, I've heard this several times, and I want you to know your YouTube watching has paid off. You did good tonight. Thank you very much. I have several questions and comments, and so some of them I'll stop and hopefully we'll get answers on as we go, and anyone at the table can help. Some of the challenges that we face as a city right now is the fact that we didn't follow previous plans and recommendations of years ago. We've talked about that at previous rate increases, that recommendations were made to change rates and we didn't do it and we didn't do it. And I realize we have a few citizens here, but we've not kept up with keeping our water functional, our pipes repaired when we could and should. We've lived on a very skinny budget, and I appreciate the forethought that's gone into this by so many to make sure that we don't have a catastrophic problem similar to a city you mentioned earlier this evening. So I thank you for your efforts. A couple comments I would like clarification on as we go along, and maybe before I go that, I'll second what Debbie LaRae said a little earlier, and you and I have had a private conversation on this. We've recently changed how we meter for sewer and how we charge for sewer. And so my feeling of fairness versus easiness, you said one would be simple, and I'm not too concerned about simple as I am concerned about fair. I think when someone's in an apartment and has no more water usage in the winter than they do in the summer because they don't have any lawn, they should pay no more for their basic water needs in the summer than they do in the winter. If all they're doing is washing clothes, cleaning, and using restrooms and showering, I believe that base rate should be exactly the same winter or summer because they're not consuming any more if it's only 3,000 or 4,000, whatever the number is. So my belief is I don't have a problem with a two-tier plan versus 5 or 6 or 7. You'll talk about measurement and how will they know. Well, my car has a little idiot thing that tells me immediately what miles per gallon I'm getting. And so I get immediate feedback. But frankly, I know whether I had that little immediate response or not, that if I go faster and I accelerate quicker, I'm going to consume more gas than if I don't. And I think people know when they water their lawns excessively. They don't know exactly, and the meter can help them. But I'm with one of those meters because I was a guinea pig that tried these out, and I've been thankful for them. But frankly, I don't check them every day before I decide if I'm going to water my lawn or not. I decide that based on dryness. And so Debbie's comment and from her neighbor, I think the base rate should be the same for basic household use in the winter and the summer. And then I'm okay with the second tier. Chris, did you want to comment?
Can I speak to that? Yes. So implementing a tiered rate structure, I believe, is what you're suggesting then. So the first tier might be, for example, in Orem, the average may be around 8,000 gallons for a typical home. So we would charge that same rate for that 8,000 gallons.
Correct.
And then beyond that, then they would charge more based on higher use. And so that would be, in effect, a tiered rate structure. Keith has suggested to me that would be very simple to modify in this plan. And we wouldn't, if we wanted to leave the seasonal rate and go to a tiered rate, that's something we could certainly do and bring back.
I don't know how the others feel, Mr. Mayor, but maybe at some point after I ask a few more questions, you can find that out as the chair. The other thing I wanted to check my math on, if Vineyard's doing 4 million gallons a month, and we're doing about 300, because you said 10 a day, and we have roughly 30 days, they're using about 1.5% of the total water supply. Do they have any plans for storage within their city? I mean, if they want a water tank, they rely on their own ability to store. Do they have storage tank capacities? Are they contemplating it? I think there's some in the audience who have wondered if we are building a storage tank for and in behalf of Vineyard, excuse me. And and I don't think we are at all. And if we are, it's 1.5% of the consumption. Could you speak to that subject?
Yeah, I can speak to that. First of all, they did buy into the 20 million gallon tank up in the Central Utah Waters, Utah Valley Water Treatment Facility. So they purchased 500,000 gallons there. They did have plans and a master plan to build a water tank in their town proper, and I believe they will still do that north of the 400 North alignment, which is the divide between where Orem City provides water to the south and Central Utah provides water to the north. They may very well develop a water storage facility south of 4th North as well. We were doing a study with Vineyard and with Central Utah Water Conservancy District, so it's a joint study with all three in conjunction with Hansen, Allen & Luce, a engineering consultant. We have had 2 or 3 meetings so far to date, and we will be bringing you proposals and ideas in the near future on potential locations. If Vineyard were to receive approval to build anything in Orem, if we did anything jointly, they would first need to obtain approval, and then they would have to be responsible to pay for that. By agreement, they're contractually obligated to pay for any cost, their proportionate share of cost, for the conveyance and for the storage that is provided.
Okay. So, and our good neighbor to the west of us has been fair with us and fair with water rates, but I think for those in the public who are perhaps hearing this for the first time, I think it's fair to represent they carry their own weight as far as water storage and payment, and I know the fee more than covers our cost, and I just wanted you to say amen, I think.
Amen. They absolutely pay for their
Yeah,
share
hallelujah.
and then some.
Maybe you could say
Tom, maybe I could jump in here for just a second. In conversations I've had with Mayor Farnworth of Vineyard, they are in the plans of building their own water storage tank. So we are not building a water storage tank for Vineyard. We are building a water storage tank for Orem.
That's correct.
And Vineyard is building their own water storage tank.
I think I knew that. I just wanted it to be on the record. Thank you.
That is correct.
I'm going to take it a step further even. When we look at this map, you can see that line does go down toward Vineyard. If we were to build that line at time of construction,
That line being C1.
C1 and C6, I'm sorry,
Okay.
that is a feeder line down to them, they are contractually obligated to also pay their proportionate share of that conveyance line.
Thank
So they're going to pay their fair share.
I need to add something on top of that now, if I may. They have done that. And for example, as recently as about 8 years ago on 400 North, they helped build that new line to service their community in 4th North from 12th West to Geneva Road. So they have paid for that historically as well.
Thank you. And then, and Mayor, thank you for your patience with me. The other question I had, and I think I've asked this before, but don't have a total recall, where a lot of the water we hope to be able to use is by circulating some cleaned up water to utilize on the golf course in the peak summer months. That it would go from where we reclaim the water and water the lawn with what we call gray water or secondary water, some terms such as that. You can help me. Do you know how many gallons that would save us if we're using roughly 300 million gallons a month in the wintertime when we're only doing 10 million a day, I think, and then we peak up to 60 million gallons a day in the summer? Do we know how much will go to the golf course? And I think we have someone, Keith, is that you, sir, diligently seeking that information now?
I was going to say, I know the answer to that.
Well, the mayor has it. Let's give it to the mayor.
The golf course uses 1 million gallons of water a day in the summer. And so we're using 1 million gallons of water, treated water, going all the way from the tanks, going all the way down there. The problem is you're treating it. And we're running it all the way across the city. By using reuse water, it saves a tremendous amount of money. And I don't know how many days the golf course is open, but anyway.
Well, million gallons a day during the heated summer is, I mean, Vineyard just pales in comparison to what we're pouring onto the golf course. So anything we can do to use secondary water there saves, first of all, is earth right and earth friendly and correct to do. Second, it saves us a lot of money along the way. So thank you, Mayor, for having that fact.
I'd like to add, in addition to that, so the potential as well not just speaking to these two facilities, Lakeside Sports Park and the golf course, but there is potential to provide reuse water elsewhere based on industry growth and demands
Sure.
for cooling waters and so forth.
Sure.
And so that would be a beneficial use there. We currently are permitted by the state engineer to use about 1/3 of the water we consume today, which is about 9 billion gallons a year, or about 30,000 acre feet a year. So we're permitted to use about 10,000 acre feet a year. Not meaning that we will, but we can go up to that.
And the
Water reuse.
the water right now is going through the Powell Slough into Utah Lake.
Correct.
So we're just letting go of it instead of reusing it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lenz.
So I appreciate the points made by Debbie and Tom regarding the tiered structure, and I'd like to Orem to get to that point where we have a tiered structure. But I did want to take a step back from the water rate specifically and look at the overall utility bill, because as many of you might be aware, the way that our sewer usage rate is billed is they take the winter usage that we're not able to read that for the 5 months or however long that period is during the winter, and then we take that, average it out over those months, and we try to essentially calculate what the sewer usage is for the entire year based off of that 4 to 5 month window. And so with our current, before we make any changes to our current rate structure, in effect, we actually incentivize conservation about 3 times more in the winter than we do in the summer. And so that would be my concern. If we don't have any change between winter and summer, we're actually currently incentivizing it a lot more in the winter to conserve than we are in the summer. So I would hate to do only a tiered rate structure without having any difference between winter and summer for that reason. Because so far our conversation has been focused on the water rate specifically, but that's part of an overall utility bill, and that's really what most of us think about when we think about our utility bill. We don't often go and see, well, how much it was to water, how much it was to sewer, how much it was street lighting, how much do I need to write the check for, or how much goes on my credit card. And so I want to make sure that our rate structure reflects conservation in a normalized way throughout the year. And really, we feel it the most in the summer because that's when we have our peak usage. So it's actually kind of paradoxical where we're incentivizing it during the time where we least need to incentivize it.
So I, like Debbie, and I think Tom, would like to look at the rates for the summer rather than just 150% of winter. Look at the idea of those that actually conserve, stay the same, and those that use more pay more for it. So I'm wondering if you could go back and take a look at that and maybe come back to us on that.
Yeah, sure. So if I'm hearing you, maybe a 3-tier, so that you have a indoor base usage, then maybe a medium user, and then a heavy user, maybe along those lines. Is that reasonable?
So again, those people who aren't using any amount different during the summer are not paying 50% more during the summer. They would be paying the same.
Yeah.
But those that are using more for their lawns, whatnot, they would pay more during the summer for that. So however you would work that out, I'd like to have you maybe go back, look at it, and maybe come back to us with
We'll bring that on
with some ideas.
the 10th.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Councilmember Sumner?
Is it possible to get other cities' comparisons if they're using the tier or how they're doing that?
Yeah, certainly. Most of the cities within this have some sort of tier, or they include a base amount, it gets into that YouTube issue of trying to make these slides clean, but we can certainly put that data together and present that.
And maybe it's good to note that all cities, due to the law recently passed, are being asked to come up with a tiered rate. They're not told what a tiered rate is or what it, how they're to set it up, but they are to do a tiered rate or a different combination rate there so that they are encouraging conservation, and that has to be done by, I believe that was May 10th, that the cities are to come up with that by, according to state law.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know the exact date. I just know that that's our plan, and we are moving towards that. So I didn't concern myself too much with the actual implementation date. But the data to produce this graph is extensive, and the research has the tiered rate structures of the other cities built into the data behind these graphs. They're quite detailed.
Thank you, Neil. And Chris, any other comments from the council? Now, if I'm reading this correctly, you are requesting not only that we adopt the master rate for or not the master, but the master water utility program, but also suggest a rate in that realm, the 5, the 7, the 10, or the bonding.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, we're not adopting it, but you wanted us to suggest.
We're requesting that you adopt the water master plan.
Right, but not the rate.
And that you give us direction on the rate so that this column here, how we get there and the tiered rate structure that we get there with, we're requesting that you recommend a rate. We're going to bring forth every year with the budget rate increase or recommendation to you every year. So you're going to recommend a plan to us, 5, 7, 10, or bonding, and then we're going to bring to you every year what that represents from here on out. So those two items, yeah.
So it's good to note, and maybe you can just go through that a little bit, but in the 5-year plan, the effect on the CIP is 0.
Yeah.
But if you go to the 7-year plan, so we're $5.6 million less spent on our CIP, and on the 10-year plan, we're $10.7 million less spent. And then on the bond situation, it's neutral.
Yes.
So, and on the sewer plan that we adopted the 7-year plan as the suggested way to go.
Yeah.
So I wanted to open it up to the council for any conversation or thoughts on that prior to setting a move to adopt the water base rate plan. So are there any comments? I myself look at it, and overall I'm comfortable with the 7-year plan as we have done previously. I'm not comfortable with bonding yet at this moment, and I'm not comfortable with the 5-year plan, but I would like to hear other thoughts. So, Councilmember McDonald.
Mr. Mayor, I think I've spoken to this subject before. I think bonding should be reserved for items where there's an immediate need that's critical and where we believe costs going up would be sufficient to justify it. When we've talked before, Keith, the current estimate was that the cost of interest would be greater than the estimated costs of increases in the construction cost. And so I, too, am with the mayor in supporting a 7-year plan versus a 5 or 10. It's somewhere in between. We don't get into bonding and mortgage our future, and we stay with a pay-as-you-go, accepting the fact that we haven't been paying as we go the last decade, and we have to play some catch-up.
So to that point, in all of what we're doing with the sewer, the stormwater, the water master plans requires that we have discipline and that we have follow-through, and I think that'll be important. Councilmember Lentz.
So I guess I would take a similar stance that I did when we were talking about the last time we had a similar vote. I like the idea of bonding, stretching it out over a longer period of time so that the people benefiting from these projects for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years, we're distributing the cost of that more, I would say, fairly, as opposed to front-loading all that cost and paying it up front. But I certainly understand the desire to be very cautious with the way that we bond for those types of things. I would be willing to consider a 7-year model as long as we did before, kind of leaving that door open that if financially it makes sense 5 years from now to bond for the water storage tank. Tom, as you were describing the situations where it makes sense to bonding, I can actually see a lot of these projects fitting that description fairly well. But I'd be comfortable with 7 years as long as we leave that door open, that if it makes financial sense to pull that trigger at that point.
I'm comfortable with that. Councilmember Larray, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'm leaning also on the 7-year plan. I like the idea of bonding if it makes sense from a financial situation or if there's some sort of thing that, a problem that arises. So I'm comfortable with 7. I could even look at a 6-year sort of scenario, but 7 was probably where I'm leaning also.
Okay. Councilmember Sumner, what are your thoughts?
I'm not comfortable with bonding at all at this point, but I agree with you. The 7-year plan is the way to go.
Councilmember Spencer?
I'm comfortable. I'm not comfortable with bonding at all, but I am comfortable with the 7-year plan. But if we adopt the 7-year plan, we still have to come back every year and approve a budget. So in reality, in 2018, the rate might go up, and we might be on the 5-year plan. Just depends on what's going on. So I'm okay with the 7-year plan. So.
Okay. No other comments. I'd like to make a motion. I would like to move that the Orem City Council by resolution adopt the 2016 Water Master Plan prepared by Bowen, Collins and Associates and accept the water user rate study prepared by Lewis, Young, Robertson and Birmingham and propose that we suggest the 7-year rate plan as the one that should be used. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Mayor, before we take a vote, I just have one question.
You bet.
Before this is brought back, I think it's at our next council meeting where you'll be bringing the proposed rate increase. Will you have a couple different options for us to consider, whether it's this winter versus summer usage rate or more of a base, medium, heavy user? Will you be able to bring a couple options to us at that point?
We can have a tiered rate option, we believe, by May 10th. And so what I've highlighted here and circled in red is we're looking at going away from the seasonal rate of the winter and the summer. We'll replace those 2 columns with a tiered rate proposal where we might have 3 or 4 tiers for you to consider then. And then the bottom tier would then be consistent with what Mr. McDonald mentioned of whatever we consume in the winter on average, then we would have that same rate applied throughout the year. So winter and summer, and then from there on up, we'd have tiered rates.
Okay. All right, we'll start with Councilmember Larray.
Aye.
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 Okay, resolution passes. Thank you. We'll now go ahead and move on to item number 17, which is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the following 2 agreements related to the Provo Orem Transportation Improvement Project. A lease agreement between the city and UTA and an interlocal agreement between the city, UTA, UDOT, MAG, and Provo. Our presenters are Paul Goodrich and Steve Earle.
We also have Janelle Robertson with us tonight with UTA. She's up here at the desk in case you have any questions of her. I think Janelle has a little PowerPoint presentation for us. While Janelle is getting that plugged in, some reminders about the project. Years ago, the City Council adopted a resolution to support the BRT project in the city of Orem, and with several conditions. One of the things that's happened since then is there's been kind of a name change on the project because it's become much more than just bus rapid transit. So the project right now is called the Provo Orem TRIP, which stands for Transportation Improvement Project. One of the great things that's going to happen is, along with the BRT being on several miles of exclusive bus lanes, we're going to get a lot of different other transportation improvements along with the project. Several of our intersections will be upgraded. We'll get better and more efficient intersections. There's a stretch of University Parkway that's going to get widened basically from 800 East here in Orem down the Provo Orem Hill. It'll go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. And there's our PowerPoint presentation. Again, you can see that's the Provo Orem trip. Not just
So is the R for regional, or you have transportation improvement?
R for transportation, yeah.
Oh, okay. I like it a lot better, just TIP. It makes it easier to say.
Well, either way, TIP, the Provo Orem TIP or the Provo Orem trip. But again, the bottom line is it's really more than transit. There's lots of improvements that are going to come along with this project. The second slide just is kind of a reminder of where we've been the last few weeks, the last 2 work sessions. We've been working on some of the resolution of some of our concerns. Just a reminder, part of that was the landscaping plan that we've developed for along University Parkway. Originally, we had what I would describe as more of a suburban kind of a landscaping, a very wide landscaping strip would go down both sides of the parkway. The problem with that is you will remember we would lose a lot of parking spaces in a lot of parking lots to do that. And so what we did is we transitioned to more of an urban landscaping design with kind of a narrower strip of landscaping, but still a very nice corridor with a tree-lined street. Also, we've talked about in the last work session putting in the lease agreement a reminder that we want to analyze a potential future station at 200 East. One of the things that we're going to be able to do is that we're engaging with UTA over the next several months to do what's called a transit-oriented development study for the entire parkway. And that's one of the things we'll look at is that a location that makes sense in the future to promote additional development along the parkway. We talked about the 1200 South, 400 West roundabout, and in the agreement it talks about how that could be a potential priority enhancement. One of the things that staff has been working on is trying to get some money for that roundabout, the widening and improvement of that roundabout through MAG. And we've passed the first couple of hurdles in that process, and it looks like there's a very good possibility that we're going to be able to get the money to do that, do some environmental analysis, and get that added to the project as a priority enhancement. The other thing, a reminder, the 3/4 access, there's a left turn access that we have. There's an opening in the median at about 300 East on the parkway. That's right next to the Mimi's restaurant. We found out that we needed to get rid of that for some different reasons. We were having some accident problems, and we need some longer dual left turn lanes on University Parkway on the approach to State Street. Along with that, though, to help promote and retain good access into that shopping area center, the agreement also talks about some of the 200 East improvements. What I'm going to do now, hopefully the microphone's on for Janelle. I'm going to have her go through the rest of the presentation and talk about a little bit about the timeline and a little more about what the project is about.
Is this on? Yes, okay. I'm certain you guys have heard all this many times before, but just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of the project and then kind of where we're going to go forward from here. Reminder, it's about a 10.5 mile project. It has about 51% exclusive bus lanes. About 1.5 miles of auto lanes will also be widened on University Parkway in the diagonal area. We'll be replacing the Provo River Bridge, and we'll be making a lot of intersection improvements, especially in the Orem area, to make those function a lot better.
Janelle, when you're replacing the bridge, you're just putting in a new wider bridge?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it's met the end of its life there. And also the crossing underneath the bridge for pedestrians and bicyclists is pretty substandard. It's very low,
So this will actually be a real benefit
It
for
will.
getting that bridge replaced. Because,
It will.
you know when it was put in originally?
I don't know, actually. Maybe Eileen from UDOT is here. She might have that answer. She doesn't know.
It looks like about 60, 70 years, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. So the pedestrian improvements under that bridge will be a lot better as well, because we'll get it out of the floodplain and be able to have more height underneath there for bicyclists. This is specifically showing the Orem area, just showing the portion that is in Orem, starting over at the Intermodal Center in just shared lanes over to Geneva Road, and then over the interchange to UVU. And we'll be replacing those UVU stations. I have an example of what one might look like a little bit in a few slides. And the yellow area you can see highlighted on there, and then the blow up to the right is where the lease agreement actually refers to, that we would be leasing the center of the road there for that bus lane. And that really helps us so that we're able to turn directly into a center station in the road, get us a queue ahead of traffic, and that should make that situation a lot easier for the buses to get into a center lane. Here is a cross-section of what the typical cross-section will be for landscaping in the area. There'll be a 6-foot sidewalk, a 10-foot park strip on each side. UDOT will have either a shoulder or there will be right turn pockets, 3 auto lanes, as there is out there right now, and then the 2 bus lanes and a center landscape median area.
So, Janelle, we are not losing any traffic lanes by putting in this system.
No, you are not.
Okay.
We're making improvements. We're even adding turn pockets in areas where they're insufficient too. This is a concept of what the station might look like at the UVU area. We're still working through what exactly those will look like, but these are the concepts that staff has preliminarily moved forward, and we know that will come to the executive committee for approval. Here are some of the key milestones moving forward. Design will be complete later this spring. Early summer, we will start some of the construction items. We'll start some utility work, probably 1st of June, late May sometime. And we'll have basically a 2 full construction season project. It'll be, I'll show you the phasing here in a minute.
Janelle, one quick question. If you wouldn't mind just going back one slide.
No problem.
For that concept. So it seems like there's a raised platform there. I'm just wondering, as far as being wheelchair accessible there, would somebody be able to wheel directly onto the bus from that platform then?
So the bus will probably be about 6 inches or so from that platform, but should be right about the same level. We would probably have to deploy a ramp if somebody was in a wheelchair, but that's the intention of that. But they will be very close, and all of these buses will be all low floor inside. So once a person wheels on that ramp, they will be in a low, flat area where they can wheel their wheelchair around the bus.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have a committee actually at Provo, at UTA, called our CAT committee, and they are carefully studying all of our stations and the accessibility to make sure that they're all meeting their standards and compliance. Any other questions about that? Okay. So 2 full construction seasons essentially. It'll take approximately 6 months or so for our startup and testing signals, getting bus drivers trained, all that type of stuff. And hopefully late winter or early spring 2019 will be in operation. Here is the contractor's proposed phasing of the project. It would be starting Phase 1 in the diagonal area, doing the widening there and the bridge replacement. And Segment 2 is actually in the University Parkway area. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Janelle, so Phase 1 there, going down the diagonal, you're going to have that all done prior to the football season, right? I'm just kidding.
I think they have their marching orders on that, but I don't know how they're going to be able to comply. But
They won't be.
They're going to do their best. I know they're working through the community right now and figuring out when major events are, and when are the important times to have these things done. The school year is sort of ideal in that summer is a good time for construction, and the school traffic is lower, and so they're going to try to get as much as they can during the summer done. I don't know all the details of the construction phasing, but this is their preliminary plan for that, and kind of leave it to any questions you might have.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Larry?
What's your anticipated ridership? Do you know when it's complete?
The ridership, including event ridership, averages, according to the projections, about 12,300 a day.
Councilmember McDonald?
Paul, you tried to point this out to us, I think, earlier, that most of these highways or streets that this bus is going on are state highways. I think I know, but some residents here may not know. Can you clarify, somebody give them a pointer or something, which roads are city highways or roads and which are state?
Yeah, what we'll do, I guess, is start here with this map. You'll see that on the left upper end of the map is the Orem Intermodal Station. That's where the front runner station is.
And the dotted lines?
Yeah.
The dotted red?
Now, that dotted lines, what that is that goes out 1,000 south of Geneva Road. So Geneva Road's a state highway. Then it goes on University Parkway. That's the next dotted line that kind of goes across the screen towards I-15. The dotted line means that it's in shared lanes with traffic. Then what it'll do is it'll go over to the campus where the big main roundabout is at the what I call the front door of the campus, and then it'll come up 1200 South, which is our road, and then it'll come down 400 West to University Parkway, and that's where the first red line is as it comes down 400 West. And so again, that's focused. That is the only street that it's in our lease agreement. That's the only street that we're leasing to UTA with an exclusive bus lane on it.
But Paul, University Parkway is a state road owned by UDOT.
And yes, and so the next road, the long red line that kind of goes by where it says Orem and across University Parkway and to the top of the diagonal, that is University Parkway. That's where most of the exclusive bus lanes in Orem are going to be, and that is a UDOT state highway.
And the green line down the hill, wherever Orem cuts off, that's a state highway as well. Correct?
Yes, that green line is also state highway, and the green identifies where we're going from 4 lanes to 6 lanes.
So we're talking about a lease that's less than a half a mile long. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, I think one of the again here the little photo on the right, that's the section of 400 West. That's the section that we want to enter into a lease agreement with UTA for, is that section of 400 West, basically from 1200 South to University Parkway.
Which is roughly 1300 South.
University Parkway is approximately 1300 South. So about 1200 South to approximately 1300 South.
Okay.
And that's the only section of the road that we have jurisdiction for, where they see the need to put an exclusive bus lane.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Janelle. Did you have more after that?
That's all I had. So
okay.
Just
one thing, you and I spoke at the work session earlier, and you had mentioned that some other cities are looking at putting in mass transit similar to this and are watching what we're doing but are trying to move forward. Can you relate who those cities are and how they're financing those projects?
Actually,
just from your memory?
I have information about Taylorsville and...
Hi, Steve Meyer. I'm Chief Development Officer with UTA. So we have a couple other projects that are in the development phases. So an Orem or Ogden project from the Intermodal Center, the Front Runner Station, to Weber State University and McCady Hospital. into the environmental process right now. So they've gone through a similar discussion on alignments and created what they call the locally preferred alternative. So they're just very early in the process there. South Davis, Centerville, or Bountiful, Centerville, and into Salt Lake City along that corridor, kind of parallel to I-15. And they've come up with a preferred alignment as well. So they're looking at that and looking to enhance that corridor. We'll be continuing discussions with them to advance those through the environmental process and then start looking for funding. Both of those are potential for this small starts type projects, federally funded through the Federal Transit Administration. That's becoming more and more competitive. That is a competitive process where our projects here in Utah compete with projects all around the country to get funded, get approved to be put into the president's budget, and get funded by Congress. So we're very proud that this project, which shows very well against their criteria, has been approved for funding.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from the council or questions? Councilmember Lurie.
Is there a formula that takes this ridership and can translate into how many vehicles that would be saving the congestion? Is there a way to kind of convert that? I know this is trips.
Yeah, I don't know that it's there's really a clear formula for that. I think you can think of it more in terms of you're increasing the capacity of this corridor by that many people a day. People are still going to drive their cars and the city is still growing, but you've just increased the capacity of the corridor by much more than you could by just adding one more lane. So,
Debbie, I know that there was a study and they figured that 30% of the wear and tear on the road will be saved by these people riding on the bus versus driving their cars.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I was just going to mention, I think this has been a project that's been a long time coming, but I believe that this will be beneficial. I remember watching tracks in Salt Lake, and there was a lot of concern as to how that would go, and that has been a large success and very needed in that community. And I believe that in the future, this will be very needed. I know in talking with President Holland, part of his traffic program for the university is to have his students using this system. And I believe that this system will be used by both universities. UVU will grow to another 10,000 here in a few years. I believe with the frequency that the ridership will continue to grow, and this will be a benefit for our community. So, Debbie, I'd like to turn some time over to you.
I'd like to move that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute the following two agreements related to the Provo Orem Transportation Improvement Project. 1, a lease agreement between the city and UTA, and 2, an interlocal agreement between the city, UTA, UDOT, MAG, and Provo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Spencer.
Aye.
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 Okay. That passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll now go on to communication items.
Mayor, just if I may, just one comment. The Outlook appointment that you have for the CIRA presentation next week is the correct appointment. So please disregard the note in your agenda.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you. 5 to 6, yes.
Okay. Any information items? Okay. All right. I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
Time for sport, man.
What do you want to second?
Oops.
Bren, what'd you do to our screen?
Glad I didn't go to that game.
That's the controversy.